everybody, this is Boog-ass Reviews, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the McFarlane Toys The Princess Bride Cloaked Fezzik figure. So before we take a look at Fezzik, let's take a look at the accessories that he comes with. So first up, he comes with your standard McFarlane stand. This time it says The Princess Bride right there. Even though he's a heavy figure, he does stand pretty well on his own. And finally, he comes with his cloak, and this is the main difference from the regular release. And I love this cloak. It drapes really nicely on the figure. It's made of a really nice weighted material, and it just lays on the figure really well, especially when you take this off, like the hood lays the way it should. Sometimes when companies do soft goods, the material just doesn't lay right on the figure, but the material on him lays very nicely. So I do think McFarlane Toys did a good job on the sculpt on him. I do think the paint is a little bit wonky, especially on this version. You can see he has a brown spot right there on his lip. He has a brown spot up here. You can see the base color of his skin tone is that really light color, and he actually has a lot of variation over it. But I do think the paint could have been a little bit better. Like from the side, I think that's a really good likeness of Andre the Giant. But from the front, I think they went just a little bit overboard on the shading. I think they went a little overboard on the shading under the eyes, and I feel like they gave him too much 5 o'clock shadow. I ended up repainting my first Fezzik figure, and I do think it looks better with all of that paint off of there. But there you can see what the sculpt looks like without all of that shading on it. And like I said, I do think the sculpt is there. I think it's a really good sculpt for Andre the Giant. It's just the paint that lets it down a little bit. He has some insane sculpt detail to his shirt. It's crazy the amount of sculpted detail McFarlane Toys was able to capture with that texturing and even in the folds there. That looks really nice. And if you look really close, there's even some paint variation over top of the base color here. So that's really awesome. I didn't notice it until I had the lights on my review station on that. It actually has a little bit of paint variation. You can tell the paint variation right here. So that looks really nice. He also has a little bit of texturing to his belt. The silver for the buckle there is done really nicely. I do wish we would have gotten a different hand for this version. This version doesn't come with a peanut or the rock. So yeah, it would have been cool if we would have just got a fisted hand. I would have been fine with that since this one doesn't come with any different accessories. He also has some really, really good texturing to his pants. I feel like the pattern could have been a little bit cleaner, but still, I think it looks pretty nice. I think the joint here is pretty seamless too. From the pants down to the boots, I feel like that joint is really seamless. Until you look at the back. Until you look at the back, it's pretty noticeable. But from the front, I think McFarlane Toys did a really good job hiding that joint. They did a really good job of hiding all the joints on the figure except for right here and on the wrists. And finally, he has some very nice texturing and paint detail to his boots. The paint detail over top of the boots really brings that sculpt out very nicely. So now let's go over his articulation. So he has a ball-jointed head that can look up all the way, even with this hair. He's not hindered. Which I forgot to mention, this is sculpted and painted really nicely as well. He can't really look down at all. His chin does hinder that. He can move his head side to side. He has ball-jointed shoulders that can move all the way out. He doesn't have butterfly joints, but he does have the same ball joints as the Mega figures from McFarlane, so you get a little bit of that butterfly motion there. He has single jointed elbows, and these are very crunchy. That is a very crunchy joint. They can move in that far. He has swivel wrists that can move side to side very slightly. It is kind of hindered there. It can move up and down very nicely, but the side to side movement is hindered. He has articulation in his waist that can move side to side. It can move up and down very slightly. Just because of the way the figure's shaped, you're not going to really get him crunching forward at all. And you get that motion just a little bit. He has hips that can only move out that far. He can barely kick forward. He can barely kick back. He has a little bit of thigh swivel. He has single jointed knees that can only bend in that far. He has swivel at the boot. He has ankles that can move down all the way, up all the way, an ankle rocker, and toe articulation that can move up just a little bit. So the articulation is kind of hindered on him. I mean, you really don't need to get him in a lot of crazy poses, but from the waist down, the articulation is pretty hindered. So now, let's do some size comparisons. So first up, here he is next to the first version of Fezzik. The only difference is that this new version comes with the cloak, and the old version came with the rock and the peanut. And finally, here he is next to Inigo Montoya, Dread Pirate Roberts, and Princess Buttercup, all from Wave 1. So overall, this figure isn't different from the first release. If you have the first release, honestly, you can probably skip this version. unless you just really like the cloak, which I do like the cloak, but I do like that the first version came with some accessories. So honestly, if you have the first version, you can skip this, but if you don't have that version, then you should pick this one up. So that's my review. If you like this review, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.